we are here. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Lopes Goes Last podcast. I, of course, am your host, Tyler Lopes. If you have not subscribed yet, please feel free to do so. Also, hit that bell icon so you never miss any one of my videos. Also, like and share this video so we can help the podcast grow. And please do follow me on Twitter at Lopes Goes Last and on Facebook at Lopes Goes Last podcast. Links for those will be down in the description below. So, I started going through this week, and obviously last week was a big week for the podcast. I put out a lot of content in a very short amount of time. Last video I recorded was prior Friday, so I believe that was the 18th of March. And then I obviously record usually on Mondays, and so I said last week, kind of jumping the gun, I said I hope to be able to get things back to normal this week. Or this upcoming week, I should say. And then I kind of realized halfway through Saturday that means that I will have to, come up with an entire another podcast in 2 days and, put it all together and record it in that short amount of time, on top of already having to put out, about 4 hours of content the prior week. And I just kind of thought, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do that. And so then I had a perfect thought. This would be the perfect opportunity for me to do another mock draft for the upcoming NFL draft in April. So that is what I will be doing today. But before I get to that, there are a couple more big signings in the world of Major League Baseball that I wanted to talk about, and also a couple in the NFL as well. I'll start with the NFL. Juju Smith-Schuster, former wide receiver of the Pittsburgh Steelers, signed a one-year contract with the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, Kansas City Chiefs offense is already dangerous enough. Adding Juju Smith-Schuster to that mix, that is another great piece for their offense. Certainly, I think that he has been undervalued over the last couple of years, not necessarily by the Steelers. I just think that by the public, one, because of his attitude issues, obviously the famous incident of him recording everything in the Pittsburgh Steelers locker room, and then obviously injuries as well. He was out for most of the year last year with injuries. It's played a really big part in him not really getting a big long-term contract, despite being a very young and productive wide receiver, which usually, those guys, they go like hotcakes, those kinds of wide receivers. But obviously, not Juju, but he does have a nice prove-it deal, $10 million with the Chiefs, and obviously not very many better teams that you can go to than the Chiefs. Arguably still the best team in the NFL, even with the departures that they've had over the last couple of seasons. So awesome, good for the Chiefs, good for Juju. I think that obviously it's great that he's not going to a place where he feels like he has to be the guy. They obviously have a ton of weapons that have been there for a while. Mecole Hardman, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. So just to name a few. So certainly a good signing for them. Don't anticipate him really signing any kind of long-term contract with them. I just don't think that even if he does prove himself to be worth a long-term extension, they just probably won't be able to sign him with all the big contracts that they already have on the books with the guys that I mentioned previously in Tyreek Hill, and then obviously Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, a bunch of the offensive linemen that they have some pretty decent contracts as well. Some of their defenders have pretty decent contracts. So obviously it doesn't appear to me like he's going to be signing any kind of long-term contract with them. But I suppose you never know. We've seen it in the past. Obviously, other news, Allen Robinson, great wide receiver for the Chicago Bears the last few years, has signed with the Los Angeles Rams on a 3-year contract. A very dangerous wide receiver and a very, very good one. And with that, the Rams also traded Robert Woods, a very good wide receiver in and of himself, to the Tennessee Titans. In a move that kind of basically corresponds with the Allen Robinson move. Obviously, Allen Robinson was essentially replacing Woods on the roster. Woods started falling out of favor this year for the Rams, and I'm not sure that's necessarily fair. Obviously, he was injured this year, but he's still a fantastic wide receiver, and I truly hope that, we don't forget that. A good signing in terms of the Allen Robinson signing for the Rams, but also great pickup for the Titans. They certainly need some firepower after they released Julio Jones. A.J. Brown can't do it all by himself. And they also signed Austin Hooper, former tight end for the Cleveland Browns. The Titans adding a little bit on offense, certainly. Not sure how much that's going to help, but we will see. And now on to the MLB. The other moves for the NFL, by the way, that happened today and in the previous days, I will be saving for the NFL mock draft, because obviously we'll have to do with the mock draft. So, moving on to the MLB, a few pretty big moves over the last couple of days. The Philadelphia Phillies signing Nick Castellanos, the Minnesota Twins signing Carlos Correa, and of course, my favorite of the three, the Boston Red Sox signing Trevor Story. I'll start with Nick Castellanos. This move surprised me, and I feel like it surprised a few of my friends as well. I talked to some Phillies fans that I know, and they were pretty surprised with this move. It wouldn't have been nearly as surprising at the beginning of the offseason, but certainly I think that the signing of Kyle Schwarber, who projected to already be the designated hitter for the Philadelphia Phillies, kind of made the Nick Castellanos signing a little bit odd, because neither Schwarber nor Castellanos is particularly adept at playing the field. Kyle Schwarber obviously played first base for the Red Sox at the end of last season, but obviously Rhys Hoskins has that position locked down. Although obviously if Kyle Schwarber wanted to, he probably could play there on days that Rhys Hoskins has off. And obviously Rhys Hoskins has had some injury issues in the past, so that's not out of the question, I'm sure. And Nick Castellanos, obviously he's played right field for most of his career. He's fine. He doesn't have particular break-end speed. He doesn't have a crazy good arm. He doesn't have that great a glove. So, he's definitely a below-average outfielder in terms of his fielding ability. But his bat is absolutely potent. I mean, for the Reds last year, he absolutely tore it up. Him and Jesse Winker both ended up starting in the All-Star game for the Reds last year, and now both of them are gone. So, sorry to all my Reds fans out there. But yeah, back to Castellanos signing with the Phillies. It did kind of, again, it was a little strange, because now obviously, one of the two of Schwarber or Castellanos is, they're going to have to play the field. And I'm assuming that they are not going to be a platoon at DH, because if that is a platoon, then you meaning the Phillies, spent way too much money on a DH platoon. So I'm guessing that one of them is going to probably play left field. If I had to pick one, I suppose I would say Schwarber. I think that he's proven in the past that he can, his bat is a little bit better when he plays the field than Castellanos' bat was, especially when he was in Detroit. Castellanos had a great bat, but I just think Schwarber may be a little bit better in the field. I think he's a little bit more athletic and a little bit more capable out there. Now, not to say that Castellanos isn't, and I certainly could see Castellanos being the one that plays left, and Schwarber's numbers certainly were better when he was a designated hitter, but I'm going to guess that Schwarber's probably going to be the one that's out there in left field and not Castellanos, but obviously it could go the other way around, no problem, but we will see what happens. And another pretty surprising move this offseason in what has been a free agency of a few pretty reasonably interesting and not to be expected moves was Carlos Correa, prized shortstop coming out of the Astros system, signing with the Minnesota Twins on a 3-year, over $100 million contract. So he's certainly getting compensated well, and what's good about that contract for Correa is that, he can go over there and he can basically be the face of that team, and a great middle infield pairing with Jorge Polanco, who had a fantastic year last year. So Correa can really be the face of that franchise, get paid $30+ million every year, and then hit free agency again when he's, I think, 29. I think he's 26 right now. So about 29, 30, 28, whatever that math ends up becoming, but somewhere around there. So he'll be able to hit free agency once again and maybe be able to capitalize on another big contract should he perform well and should his game age well. Obviously, he won his first Gold Glove last year, was certainly in the running for Platinum Glove as well. He was one of the best defenders in baseball last year, for sure. And he obviously had a great offensive year as well. And he actually managed to mostly stay healthy, which has been a concern for Correa for most of his career as well. And if he can keep that up, he's certainly going to live up to his contract, even though it is pretty hefty one in terms of the annual average salary. So great signing for the Twins. I love it for them. It is a little confusing for Correa in terms of the situation that he'll be in. The Twins certainly are not going to be in contention this year, barring any kind of just craziness in that division. Their pitching staff has really taken a hit over the last couple of years, especially with the decline of Kenta Maeda and the departure of Jose Barrios. They have some good hitters on that team, such as, Max Kepler, obviously Jorge Polanco, as I mentioned earlier. Now Gary Sanchez, who I still think when he plays, he's a pretty good bat, even though his average and on-base percentage is not all that great, but he's got some good pop. We will see. And then obviously Gio Urshela. But I still don't expect them to really be all that great in terms of a team. So it is a little strange. Maybe Correa, he's obviously, he's already won, a lot of awards over his time in Houston. He's won a World Series. He's won a Gold Glove. I think he may have even won MVP. I might be mistaken on that. It's been a while, but he might have also won an MVP. I don't remember. I might be completely losing my mind on that. But nonetheless, he's certainly, he's had a great career already, and he's got his bag. He's making a lot of money, so good for him, and great for the Twins. They get one of the best young shortstops in baseball. I'm never going to hate on a move like that. And then now my favorite move of the offseason, obviously for many reasons. The Boston Red Sox signing Trevor Story to a 6-year, $140 million deal. Some of the contract details were a little bit wonky. I've never seen something like this in a contract, at least not to my memory. He does have an opt-out after 4 years of the contract. However, the Red Sox can also, I don't know what the terminology is, but it's like, negate out that buyout, really. I don't know how the terminology is exactly, but they can basically cancel the buyout by adding another year onto the deal for $20 million, making it a $160 million contract. Interesting contract for sure. But about Trevor Story, I think a lot of people have forgotten just how good of a player Trevor Story is, and maybe not necessarily forgotten that he's a great player, but he had some injuries last year. His production definitely took a dip last year from what it normally was, and a lot of people are saying that this is not a great signing for the Red Sox because, one, they are quote unquote rebuilding, they're not necessarily rebuilding in terms of like they're, getting rid of all their stars and building through the draft. But Shane Bloom certainly has reinstated a lot of great habits in terms of the minor league system for the Red Sox and in terms of, how they're going to be developing guys. We obviously have some pretty decent prospects now, when a couple of years ago we had barely anything in terms of prospects because they had all come up and are all playing major roles at the same time for the Red Sox. And now we have at least a somewhat okay foundation of getting some good prospects in there. So we will see how that develops, but certainly one of the reasons that they say it's a bad move is because the Red Sox are rebuilding. Another is because we already have a fantastic shortstop at Xander Bogaerts, and, we didn't necessarily need Trevor Story because Xander Bogaerts already provides all the production that the Red Sox need at that position. Certainly a valid argument, however, obviously a great athlete like Story and a great athlete like Xander would certainly be able to move positions should they need it. honestly, if it was up to me, I would have Xander Bogaerts move to third base. I'd have Rafael Devers play first base, and I would have Trevor Story play, shortstop, and then eventually, call up one of our stud prospects, like a Marcelo Meyer, like a Jeter Downs, to play second base. Or Nick York, obviously. That certainly seems to be a possibility. But we will kind of see how that plays out. But obviously, that's another one of the reasons why people say it's a bad move for the Red Sox. And another one, and this is my least favorite one of all, is that Trevor Story can't play on the road. Anybody who looks at his home road splits, and they might not necessarily know enough about Coors Field, they might say Trevor Story is going to be terrible in a Red Sox uniform because he's absolutely horrible on the road as compared to when he hits in Coors Field. He's only good because he hits 80 games in Coors Field, and so he's going to take a huge step back when he goes to Fenway for 80 games. I have two things to say to that. One, yes, Coors Field has obviously a hitter's advantage. The air is thinner up there, balls fly a little bit more, ball's a little bit lighter. We all understand that. That is not a dispute. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to prove that that's incorrect. But what I am saying is that in terms of, OPS, average OPS for hitters, in terms of, average for a ballpark, Coors is number one, but Fenway, I believe, unless I am completely mistaken and I misread that, is number two. So certainly it is not as if the Red Sox and Fenway Park do not have their own advantages. Obviously, Trevor Story is very, very good at hitting the ball into right field, hitting it into those gaps, those big, large gaps in Fenway Park. And then obviously you have the green monster in left field. So he'll be able to pull the ball a little bit more and be able to play with that monster a little bit. And so certainly that will probably help him out as well. So that is the first thing I had to say. And the second thing is, here's the thing about Coors Field. So it's not just an advantage for when you go there, is Coors Field. However, it is also a disadvantage for when you leave there if you are playing there. Now, in terms of players who have, played their whole career at Coors Field and then left, such as a Nolan Arenado, I honestly haven't really seen a lot of evidence to say that, a person who stays a really long time in Coors goes to another team and absolutely stinks. Obviously, Nolan Arenado did not do that with the Cardinals. His average was down a little bit, but his power was still there. His gap-to-gap power was still there. He still had a ton of RBIs. So, I don't think it would be fair to say at all that Nolan Arenado took a step back in terms of his production. I certainly don't think he did. But what it does do, it being Coors Field, is when you do play there for 80 games, and during that season that you're playing there, you go on the road, it's a little bit more difficult to adjust to different styles of pitching, different ball flight, obviously different air conditions in terms of, sometimes you're playing indoors, sometimes you're playing outdoors, sometimes you're playing, like say you're playing the Arizona Diamondbacks in a stadium that has a humidifier, which is exactly the opposite of what is Coors Field, which is basically the anti-humidifier. A humidifier is meant to put moisture in the air to make balls not fly as far, and obviously Coors Field has very thin air, so it makes balls fly farther. So, there's a lot of reasons that you can say that this isn't a great signing for the Red Sox. I don't listen to that noise because, quite frankly, I don't think any of the arguments make that much sense or really stick. Obviously, Trevor Story has said that he's going to play second base this year, which I was a little surprised because I think just about a month ago he said he did not want to switch positions. But now, obviously, he's signed with the Red Sox and he's going to play second base this year. But what does concern me, I will say, is Xander Bogaerts does have an opt-out after the 2022 season. So I'm a little concerned that he's going to actually do that. And now I do think that he's going to opt out no matter what. I think that was pretty much a guarantee. My real concern is obviously that he won't come back. Because if Trevor Story is there at shortstop, Xander Bogaerts isn't going to want to move positions unless he absolutely has to. Again, if I had my way, Xander would be playing third. Where, obviously his range, his lack of elite range at shortstop's not going to hurt him. And then move Rafael Devers to first which Rafael Devers, I mean, I love the guy. He is such a fantastic baseball player, but he's one of the worst defending third basemen in the league, and I don't think that's really an argument. So, putting him at first, I think, would negate that. And then obviously that would negate our first baseman problem that we've had over the last couple of years when all we've had is Mitch Moreland and Bobby Dahlbeck over there, basically. And then obviously Kyle Schwarber a little bit last year at the end. But, other than that, really it's just been, horribly average at first base, maybe even below average for most of the time in terms of offensive production. So I definitely think that Rafael Devers would completely change that. But that doesn't seem like it's going to happen, at least not right now. So my concern is that Xander will leave. And that would obviously be really, really crappy. I mean, Xander Bogaerts has had a fantastic career with the Red Sox. And obviously he's been one of the, if not the best, consistently hitting shortstops offensively in the league over the last 3 or 4 years. Obviously some guys have had better seasons, but I think consistently staying healthy, putting up great offensive numbers, Xander Bogaerts is right up there at the top. It would be sad to see him leave. It'd be sad to see him go, but obviously if that's what had to happen, at the very least you have a fantastic replacement in Trevor Story. You could call up, again, like I said, a Jeter Downs or a Nick York, somebody like that. I don't think Meyer's going to be ready by next year, but you never know. He could tear it up this year. You never really know. Obviously, I think it's a great move, especially for this year. It certainly gives our lineup some depth and some firepower that we didn't really have before. We've had some issues at the second base position for the last, bunch of years because obviously, Dustin Pedroia filled that hole for many, many years. And obviously when he went down with injury a few years ago and ended up having to retire, second base was kind of in flux for the Red Sox, and it has been. But now, at least for this season, we're going to have a fantastic second baseman. Now, obviously, that's assuming that Trevor Story's game can translate over to second base, but he's fast. He's got a great glove. He's had a fantastic arm. Obviously, he had some arm injuries last year, so I think it's probably a good thing that he's going to play second base for a year. It's going to be shorter throws, less stress on your arm, probably less plays as well. Shortstop, I just feel like gets the ball hit to them a little bit more. Maybe not necessarily in MLB because obviously you have a good amount of lefty hitters as well that like to pull the ball, but I think that it will still definitely, regardless of that last part of less ground balls, I still think it'll be a lot less strain on his arm than shortstop, obviously. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think it's a great signing for the Red Sox. I think certainly he gives you a great option offensively and defensively. He stole 20 bases last year. He's a guy that's certainly for the Red Sox with how aggressive Alex Cora is. He's a guy that can get 25 home runs and 25 stolen bases easily, I think, if he reaches his potential and stays healthy. So I think it's a great signing, and I really am looking forward to seeing Trevor Story in a Red Sox uniform because, he played in Colorado, obviously, for his whole career. So I didn't get to watch him a lot unless it was playoffs or unless I was just, there was nothing really else on and, the Rockies were on TV. I could watch Trevor Story, but other than that, I didn't really get to watch a lot of him, but now I'll get to watch him a lot more. So I think that's a great privilege to have. But all right, that's all I have in terms of the MLB. So I am going to take you to the NFL draft, and I will see you there in a second. All right, so we are here at the NFL draft. So I don't think this is going to be my last NFL draft. I think I'm going to at least try and do one more before the actual draft happens in April. I'd like to either do one with actual trades, so I can trade back or trade up depending on what I think might actually happen, or I can do a 2-round mock draft. This is just going to be a 1-round mock draft. Obviously, I don't think that, we're through free agency yet, so it might be a little weird to do a 2-round mock draft right now. Although obviously it'd be a lot easier than before when I did my last mock draft. But again, I'd like to either do a one-round mock draft with trades or a 2-round mock draft. So if you guys have a preference of which one you'd like to see, let me know in the comments below. Let me know on Twitter or Facebook. Any way that you can get a hold of me, let me know, and I will certainly take that into consideration. But for right now, let's get into it. So obviously with free agency, with the combine, with pro days happening with trades and all this crazy stuff that's been going on. The draft board looks quite a bit different than it did a few weeks ago with all the trades and everything like that. It's been, I think, honestly, the craziest offseason in recent memory. Definitely in the last few seasons, and hopefully with all the natural light that I'm getting over here, that I'll be able to have some light of knowledge shine on me here. Probably not, but we'll see. So I think right now, with all of the stuff, starting with the Jacksonville Jaguars, that has not changed. The first 8 picks have not changed in terms of who owns them. So obviously, the only thing that has changed in terms of these first 8 picks is the team needs from last time. Obviously, with free agency, teams filling some holes in their roster that they needed to fill. And now, obviously, we'll have a little bit more knowledge of where I think each team will go. So starting with the Jaguars. Obviously, last time I had them taking Evan Neal out of Alabama, but they did sign a handful of offensive linemen. They franchise tagged Cam Robinson, their tackle, so he's at least around for this year. And then obviously they shined. That's not it. They signed Brandon Scherf. Excuse me, I got a little ahead of myself. Guard for a pretty hefty contract, so he'll be there. So that's obviously 2 really good offensive linemen that they were able to bring back. And so I don't think offensive line is that big of a need for them right now anymore. I definitely don't think that it's worth going number 1 overall. I didn't think Evan Neal was worth going number 1 overall before, but certainly they really desperately needed offensive linemen at the time. So now I think it makes a lot more sense to draft Aiden Hutchinson here at number 1. I think they just need edge rushers, and Aiden Hutchinson is the best one in the draft. I don't think there's really much explanation needed there. However, I will say I still can see them taking an Evan Neal. I still can see them taking even an Ike Mekwonu. I've seen that in a bunch of mock drafts. And honestly, I think I might like Ike Mekwonu a little bit better for most of the teams up front than Evan Neal, just because he has positional flexibility. He can play tackle, he can play guard, and he had a really good combine as well. So, and not to say Evan Neal didn't have a good combine, he definitely did, but I just think that, Evan Neal, you're pretty much stuck at one of the tackle positions. Ike Mekwonu can play, at least 4 positions on the offensive line, if not all 5. So definitely, I think that I could see them taking him at first overall if they feel like they really want to solidify that line. But right now, I think it just makes a little bit more sense to go with and filling a team need, especially with Aiden Hutchinson, who, very well may be the best player in the draft, never mind just pass rusher. So now, on to the Lions, and I'm sure that they were hoping that Aiden Hutchinson would fall to them, which certainly if he did, then they would take him, no doubt about it. But right now, I just think that you need pass rusher no matter what, and I'm going to take Kayvon Thibodeaux here. I understand that may not be a popular decision. He has certainly fallen in a lot of mock drafts, although I have seen him go this high in some mock drafts still. But I'm going to take him. There's been a narrative that he doesn't care about football, that he doesn't put in as much effort as he should, and I don't really pay attention to that kind of stuff unless I see it myself. I don't think that that's the case with Kayvon Thibodeaux. I think that maybe there's some signs that he's been, it hasn't looked great for him in terms of the attitude and in terms of the effort, but I think that, quite frankly, teams are overthinking it. He is, I think, definitely at least the most talented player in the draft, and the Lions, I think if this was at least 2 months ago, he would definitely be going number 1 overall. So, I'm going to take him here. There's certainly room for disagreement there for you guys. But I'm going to take him. I think that just pass rusher it's such a big need, and I definitely wouldn't be comfortable taking anybody else in that spot other than Thibodeaux. So that brings us to the Houston Texans. So there's certainly some options out here. I've seen Sauce Gardner go this high. I don't think I'm going to do that for this. I think that right now, again, I think the Texans need a lot. They need pretty much every position is a need for them. Other than maybe quarterback. Obviously, they just traded Deshaun Watson. So Davis Mills is going to be your starter, at least for now. and probably for the foreseeable future. And so for me, when you have a young quarterback like that, I think it's so important to solidify that offensive line and protect him. So I'm going to go Evan Neal out of Alabama. Tackle's not the biggest need for them. Obviously, you have Laramie Tunsil on your left side, so Evan Neal would slide over to your right tackle spot. But I just think that he's a great player. He obviously has the size, he has the tools, he has the hands. He has the length to really be dominant in the NFL, and I'm not sure how long Laramie Tunsil's contract is with the Texans, but I think this also gives them flexibility if he needs to walk in free agency or if they want to trade him at some point. I think that gives them flexibility to do that, so I think that makes the most sense to me. Jets, I have been pretty vocal about this. I think that I know that they signed a safety to replace Marcus May, and they did sign a corner, but I still think Kyle Hamilton is where you need to go with this pick. Kyle Hamilton, he's definitely the best defensive back in the draft. I don't really think that's a question. Maybe you could say Sauce Gardner because corner is a little bit more of a prestigious position, but I think Kyle Hamilton is absolutely fantastic. He had a fantastic combine. He ran really well. He did great in all the agility drills. I just think Kyle Hamilton needs to be on the board for the Jets, and they've taken a couple safeties in the first round in the past, and they've both been great players in Jamal Adams and Marcus May, so we will see. I definitely think Kyle Hamilton's where they need to go here. And now for the Giants, they're in a fantastic spot here. They have their pick of the litter at 5. They obviously also have the 7th pick as well, but I'm going to take Ika Mekwonu. I don't think that's really even I don't even think that's really a question at this spot. For me, like I said, Ika Mekwonu might go number 1 overall. And so to get him at 5, I think it's a great value for the Giants at this point. They definitely need offensive line, and Ika Mekwonu can play all over the offensive line. So if they feel that he'll be better at left tackle and move Andrew Thomas over to right tackle, they could do that. If he can, they want him to play right, Ika Mekwonu to play right tackle, he can do that. He can play either of the guard spots. He might even be able to play center. Who knows? So, I think that would be the perfect pick for them at 5 if he were to fall to them. Now, Carolina, they need a lot. They need a quarterback for sure. They're really one of the only teams left that need a quarterback. So I can certainly see them going quarterback here. Although I'm not going to do that in this draft because again, I just think that it's a spot where I don't like any of the quarterbacks at 6. I don't think that's great value for them. But although obviously, it would make sense. But my thing is, yes, Sam Darnold may not be the answer, but he's not the worst quarterback in the NFL. He really isn't. He's not great, but he's about average, a little below average maybe. So maybe, okay, no, he's probably below average. He's definitely below average. But, he's still fine. Like, he's not going to, completely just throw away all your games and again, he's not great, but I still think that you have him and you paid a big price to have him. So I think that you should at least give him one more year, let him play out his contract, and maybe draft a quarterback a little bit later. Obviously, you've got guys like Desmond Ridder later, Matt Corral, Sam Howell, Carson Strong. So you've got some quarterbacks here, but I think that Carolina is one of those teams that's in a great position to take a C.J. Stroud or a Bryce Young next year. Should their record be bad enough, or should they be willing to pay the price for it? So right now, I think I'm going to go Charles Cross out of Mississippi State. They definitely need to fill again another offensive line position there in Carolina, and I think that maybe you go quarterback a little bit later. Or maybe you try and swing a trade. Baker Mayfield is still available as of right now, as of the time I'm recording this. So maybe you swing a trade for Baker Mayfield at this point. Right now I think Charles Cross makes the most sense. Back to the Giants. I'm sure that they are thrilled right now because they're going to get Trayvon Walker, 2 of the best players in the draft, Ika Mekwonu, Trayvon Walker. Trayvon Walker, I think, not only did he really show out at the combine, I think he scared a lot of people because, he just was moving at all sectors. He really just had a fantastic combine, as did pretty much everybody that went to Michigan and Georgia. Every single defender, even guys that aren't projected to go super high, They really showed out as well for both those schools. So Trayvon Walker here, I think, is the perfect fit for what the Giants need right now. So you fill your two biggest needs if you're the Giants really early in the draft. So good for them. Atlanta. Big day for Atlanta in a lot of ways. So as of the time I'm recording this, a couple of hours ago, the Falcons traded away longtime quarterback Matt Ryan to the Indianapolis Colts for a third-round pick in this draft, I believe. Crazy. Matt Ryan was drafted out of Boston College in 2008, and he's been there ever since. So that's almost 15 years at this point. It's going to be really hard to imagine Matt Ryan not in a Falcons uniform next year, and it's going to be even kind of weirder in a Colts uniform for whatever reason, just all white uniforms and just a little bit of blue. Like, I just can't imagine Matt Ryan in that uniform right now, but I'm sure I'll get used to it eventually. Big trade for them, and they signed Marcus Mariota on a 2-year contract, but I genuinely do not believe that they think he's going to be their future at quarterback. And, Falcons may be another team that is in a good position to take a quarterback next year. But I think right now, the fact that Kenny Pickett is available, I'm going to take him here. I just think it makes the most sense. Obviously, if you guys watched my podcast when I had Ryan Bruce and Andy Riley on, they both loved Kenny Pickett. I think that it's a great spot for him to go. And I think that obviously, with Marcus Mariota there, honestly, Kenny Pickett and Marcus Mariota have a lot of similarities in their game. They're not the most mobile quarterbacks, but they're definitely capable of moving a little bit. Both, Mariota and Pickett had very similar 40 times. I think they have very similar arm talent coming out of the draft as well. So I think that it's a pretty, perfect spot for him to go in terms of just being able to really develop for at least a year as Mariota probably ends up taking the job day one. But you never really know. So I think Kenny Pickett definitely is going to be going at 8. I can certainly see Malik Willis as well at this spot, but I think Kenny Pickett is just a little bit more polished right now. Malik Willis is a little bit more of a project, and I certainly don't think Atlanta fans want to be in a rebuild for very long. Seattle, crazy trading away Russell Wilson. It's just going to be a whole new chapter. Another guy that it's going to be tough to imagine not in that uniform. Right now Drew Lock is projected to be the starting quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks, but I definitely do not think that they are okay with that. They are definitely right here. If he is available, Malik Willis and Russell Wilson obviously have a lot of similarities, I think. The arm talent, certainly, the fact that they were both looked upon as projects coming out of the draft. Obviously, Russell Wilson was in a little bit of a different spot. He was drafted in the 3rd round. Obviously, Malik Willis is projected to go 9 here in this. So obviously a bit of a different scenario, but I don't think the Seahawks want Drew Lock to be their quarterback. And I quite frankly don't blame them. So I think Malik Willis, kind of giving him a year, maybe 2, to develop and figure out how to read the game and adjust to the NFL from Liberty, which is obviously a very small college as compared to an LSU, Florida State, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia. You get the idea. I think that's a perfect fit for them at this point. Jets, we are back to the Jets. I think that they certainly could go offensive line here, but I gotta be honest with you. They've taken a lot of offensive linemen high in drafts, and I think that in the future they're going to be able to sign guys, sign tackles, and you could definitely draft offensive linemen later in the draft and develop them. So I don't really think that they should go offensive line here with Sauce Gardner still available at 10. So I think they're going to go here. You get certainly a lockdown corner, number 1 caliber guy in Sauce Gardner. So I think that, if he's available here, you've already got Kyle Hamilton, you've got Ahmad Gardner, just solidify that secondary, because quite frankly, your secondary was the worst part of your team. You've got a young developing quarterback, you've got a young developing offensive line, you got a young and, partially established, really, wide receiver core. I definitely think that you're going to be in a position to take some more wide receivers as you go down the board in this draft, like a Sky Moore, probably, or, let me see here, maybe even a George Pickens, who, he'll probably be out for this year, or at least for most of it, with injury, but you never really know. And you never really know if these guys are going to be available as well. Maybe even a John Mechie. Like, you've got some good wide receivers that you can take in this year's draft as well. So I think that really solidifying your secondary with Hamilton, with Gardner, with the people that you signed in free agency, I think that that's probably where they're going to want to go there. Washington, obviously before I had them taking Kenny Pickett because they needed a quarterback, but then they decided to give up way too much for Carson Wentz. To put it in perspective, Matt Ryan was just traded for a third-round pick, and Carson Wentz, who is not nearly as good of a quarterback, was traded for 2 third-round picks. So, that's a little crazy. I know, I'm not sure, if you guys watching know this, but, the Falcons are taking on Matt Ryan's money still. So, they didn't exactly get rid of Matt Ryan's contract either. They're taking on like $40 million in dead money, which, not ideal, but they should get rid of that after this season, of course. So, yeah, definitely interesting when you look at it from that perspective. But nonetheless, Washington no longer needs a quarterback. At least not for now, although I certainly think that they should invest in one maybe later in the draft. But right now, I think that they definitely are going to need some weapons, and I think Drake London is where they're going to go. I think that he really just fits what they don't have. Obviously, Terry McLaurin is, more of a quicker guy, can operate outside and inside, and Drake London can be your big-bodied wide receiver that can go up and get jump balls. Similar to what a Michael Pittman was last year, who actually had a pretty good year with Carson Wentz, even though for the most part Carson Wentz couldn't really throw the football. But I think Drake London is where it just makes sense for the Commanders right now. Okay, so now we are moving on to the Vikings, and this is where it kind of starts to get a little bit tough for the Vikings. I think they need a lot, and honestly, a lot of what they need right now is off the board. Certainly, their biggest need is safety. There's not going to be a great safety coming off the board until Daxton Hill, and he'll probably go late first round, maybe even early second round, depending on how things shake up. So I don't think that makes sense, and I also think this is too early for a Devontae Wyatt and for a Jordan Davis. So I think for me, I am going to go with a Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State. I think they certainly could use some more pass rush over there in Minnesota, and I think Jermaine Johnson has really flown up draft boards after a fantastic combine, so I think that makes the most sense for him right now. Okay, so we are back to Houston. Obviously, this is the pick that they received for trading away Deshaun Watson to the Cleveland Browns. So now they own the Browns pick in this year's draft. So, you've got, Jermaine Johnson off the board. I'm sure that they would have loved to draft him, but I think Derek Stingley at this spot is a great catch for them. Derek Stingley, I think, is a guy that can really go in there and, really play well. And obviously, I think that he would just look great in a Texans uniform. Obviously, the Texans don't have that great a team right now, but Derek Stingley just feels like a Houston Texan to me. I'm not really sure why necessarily, but he definitely does feel like a Texan to me. So we will kind of see how that shakes up. And then now we are here for the Baltimore Ravens, and I know that I said that it's a little bit high to take a Devontae Wyatt or a Jordan Davis, but I just think that the Ravens just desperately need to figure out that defensive line, and Devontae Wyatt is a guy that can play inside, he can play outside. He had another guy that had a fantastic combine. I think that if he's available at 14, I think the Ravens will jump all over him, and I think he's a perfect Raven, certainly, and again, a guy that can play all over the defensive line, so he'll certainly be able to fill whatever gaps that the Baltimore Ravens feel that they need. And now you got the Philadelphia Eagles, who have, they're obviously in a great spot, as I've said before. And I think the first thing that they are going to do is, again, re-solidify that secondary, and they're going to go with Trent McDuffie out of Washington. Certainly, you could make the argument that McDuffie's going to go before Stingley. I could definitely see that. But I just think that, and you could really flip-flop those, honestly, but I just think that Stingley makes a little more sense for what the Houston Texans do, and McDuffie makes a little bit more sense for what Philadelphia does. So definitely, I think McDuffie is a great pick for them here. And then now you've got the idea of having back-to-back picks, which is awesome for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I'm tempted to take the first wide receiver of the draft here, but I just think that I would feel bad because clearly whoever gets drafted there is probably not going to turn out to be all that great, because unless your name is Devontae Smith, if you're a first-round wide receiver that goes to the Philadelphia Eagles, you're not going to really amount to much. So I'm going to hold off on that for now, and I am going to take probably here, I'm going to go with George Karlaftis. I think that's probably the best fit for the Eagles right now. So George Karlaftis, I certainly could see him going at 19, but I think that it just makes the most sense. David Ojabo definitely would have been the pick here had he not torn his Achilles tendon a couple of days ago, but I think given the circumstances, they'll probably want to go with somebody who's a little bit safer in George Karlaftis. And now we get to the Chargers. It's the same pick that it has been for me. It's Jordan Davis. All the way. They need an interior defensive lineman quite badly. Chargers spent a lot of money this offseason to solidify that defense. Let's put that final piece in that defense because, quite frankly, your offense is going to be good enough with Justin Herbert and with the weapons that you have out there. Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen. So certainly I think that just solidifying that defense is the way to go here. Now, with the New Orleans Saints, this was a tough one. I'm definitely tempted to take quarterback, even though they did just re-sign Jameis Winston. But I think I am going to hold off, and I am going to take Garrett Wilson out of Ohio State. I still think that he's the best fit for that team right now. And I just think that, obviously Jameis Winston's going to want some more weapons to throw to, and I think it just makes the most sense. Now at 19, I don't even think that, there's much of a debate here. Trevor Penning out of Northern Iowa. Obviously, tackle's not your biggest need, but if Trevor Penning falls this far, I don't think that the Eagles are going to wait around. I think they're going to scoop him up and, play him at tackle. They'll be able to move some things around on their offensive line, I'm sure. They'll figure something out. They'll figure out a way to get this guy on the field because he is absolutely fantastic. He's one of my favorite players in the draft. And certainly I could see him going much, much, much higher than he has. But I think right now it makes the most sense to have him go here. That's just one of these things. You have 3 first-round picks. I think you can afford to go best player available, or at least one of the best players available in the draft at this spot. So that brings up the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, they signed Mitch Trubisky in the offseason, and I certainly could see them going quarterback later in the draft. Maybe a Carson Strong or a Sam Howell to develop behind Mitch Trubisky, because, again, I genuinely hope that he is not looked at as the future of the quarterback position in Pittsburgh, but you never really know. So I think that it makes the most sense to go Tyler Linderbaum here out of Iowa. They certainly need a guy to step in there and take control of that offensive line. He's obviously a great center. He can play guard as well. So I think that obviously with the needs on the interior of the offensive line for the Steelers, Tyler Linderbaum makes the most sense here. New England, I think that at this point, the Patriots have signed Trent Brown to a new contract, so I think offensive line is out of the question at this point. They're able to bring in a couple of guys, a couple of pieces on that offensive line to fill the holes, and I think that they have some guys to replace Shaq Mason and some guys that they lost. So corner is certainly in play here. Andrew Booth is quite tempting. Jamison Williams is also quite tempting here. But I am going to take Nakobe Dean out of Georgia. I think it just makes the most sense. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to take Nakobe Dean. I'm going to take Devin Lloyd. I think that he just has more upside. I think he fits more what the Patriots need right now. I think Nakobe Dean is more of a Patriots-type player. But I think that the speed of Devin Lloyd is just what the Patriots need right now. And I certainly can see the Patriots falling in love with him throughout the draft process. So I'm going to go Devin Lloyd here instead of Nakobe Dean. Certainly I could see if they were both available, Nakobe Dean going here. But I'm going to go with Devin Lloyd at number 21. Green Bay, you already know what I'm going to do, guys. They traded away Devontae Adams. And so I'm going to take wide receiver, and you got a great one available. Jameson Williams, I think, he might not fall this far, but I think if he does, Green Bay is going to scoop him up. I think they have to scoop him up at 22. He may not play this year, but if you can get a guy that is that fast and that talented, even if you lose a year of him, I think that at this spot, Green Bay is going to want all the talent at that position that they can get, even if, again, it means them losing a year of him. So Jameson Williams to the Green Bay Packers. Arizona, Andrew Booth still available. They need corner desperately. I'm going Andrew Booth. I believe I did that as well in the last mock draft. Certainly I could see Booth going earlier. I could see him going later. It just really depends on who you ask. But Andrew Booth, very talented. Can jump out of the gym. He has great ball skills, good cover skills. So I think that it's a great pickup for the Cardinals. Dallas Cowboys. So at this point, this is another spot where, David Ojabo, he's still here. He was projected to go, top 10, top 15. He's still here. Do the Cowboys go with Ojabo? I could certainly see it, but I think somebody who is fallen under the radar, Boye Mafe, I think that he flew up draft boards after his combine. He looked like an absolute animal out there. He looked big, fast, strong. I mean, he just looked like a guy that can come into the NFL and rush the passer right away, maybe even play on the interior of the defensive line as well. So I think that, there's guys that, they go earlier, they go later than people expect. And I think Boye Mafe is one of those guys that, is a sleeper to really, end up making it and really just end up being a guy that that can kind of come up draft boards a little bit more than what we expect. You kind of see that every year, right? Obviously, you had Alex Leatherwood last year. You got Cleveland Farrell a couple of years ago. So, it just depends on I guess both those picks were Raiders. So the Raiders aren't picking in the first round this year, which, good because, they don't end up picking great in the first round anyway. But nonetheless, I think Boye Mafe is one of those guys that might be able to slide up draft boards a little bit. Although, again, I certainly could see David Ojabo going here. I could also see them going Zion Johnson or Kenyon Green at this point because they certainly have lost a good amount on their offensive line as well. They lost Connor Williams. They lost Lael Collins. So certainly I could see them going offensive line as well, but I think Boye Mafe is going to be too good to pass up in the eyes of Jerry Jones and that staff over there. Now, that brings us to the Buffalo Bills, and I think that, obviously, it's not the most ideal situation given what they need. DeMarvin Leal is a guy that I think had a great combine, but I don't think it really affected his draft stock too much. I don't think that he is going to be a first-round guy, at least not right now. You never really know. Perry and Winfrey, I don't know a ton about, but he seems to be the best player available and the consensus best defensive lineman available, after, your guys, after Devontae Wyatt, after Jordan Davis. Maybe a Cam Thomas as well is in that spot, but he's more of an edge rusher. So I am going to go Perry and Winfrey here. I'm not sure, how that's going to translate necessarily, but man, the Bills just need something on that defensive line. They've invested a lot of picks in their defensive line, and it just hasn't panned out as of right now. AJ Epineza, Greg Rousseau stand out to me. But we will see how that goes, and I think Perry and Winfrey, certainly in the little bit of tape that I've seen, he seems to be very, very talented. So we will see how that translates. Now, Tennessee, so they have their number one need as wide receiver. I disagree. A.J. Brown and Robert Woods, I think, that gives you plenty of firepower at the wide receiver position, at least enough to where it's not your number one need. So I think certainly linebacker is your number one need, and Nakobe Dean is available. And so that's, I think, the obvious choice here for the Tennessee Titans. Very, very good linebacker. Obviously, a great leader. Was arguably the best defender on an absolutely stacked Georgia squad last year. So I think that's a great pick up for them. Buccaneers, obviously Tom Brady unretiring, so you do not need a quarterback at this spot, which would have, probably brought your team into panic mode. You certainly could use secondary, even though you did re-sign Carlton Davis, and you obviously still have Sean Murphy-Bunting, and you also have some great safeties out there as well. But We will see. This is a tough one for me. I think Traylon Burks makes sense, but I think I'm going to go with Chris Olave. I just think that he just fits the bill for me in terms of what the Bucs might look for, what Tom Brady might look for. You know, your shiftier guys. You know, he ran very, very well at the combine. But I think that he's more of a quick play receiver than he will be just a straight burner. Like, I don't think him and Jameson Williams are the same player. I think that Jameson Williams is more of a burner, a speed out guy, a post guy, just straight running streaks. And I think Olave can be that guy that plays in the slot, that gets open, that gets that, 8 to 10 catches per game. I think he certainly has the potential to do that, so I think he fits that offense a little bit more. Not to say that Traylon Burks certainly couldn't be a great weapon in that offense. I think he certainly could, but I just think Olave makes a little bit more sense for the Bucs here. Green Bay, they still need wide receiver. I don't care that that's crossed out. David Ojabo is here, and that is, of course, incredibly tempting. But Traylon Burks still being available here. I got to go Traylon Burks out of Arkansas. And, he is a guy that can step in and be a weapon for them right away, day one. A guy that can, he can run, he can catch. He didn't run as good at the combine or as well at the combine for those grammar people out there. He didn't run as well at the combine as I think a lot of people would have liked, but he certainly plays a lot faster than what his combine tape shows. And I think that he'd be a great weapon for Aaron Rodgers out there. Certainly help to fill that void that Devontae Adams will leave. Now, the Miami Dolphins are in kind of an interesting spot. I think that certainly wide receiver is in play here, but I'm not really sure if that's the best place to go here, considering the offensive linemen that are still available. Zion Johnson, Kenyon Green. I think that these are two of the most talented players in the draft, and so I am going to go Zion Johnson here. I think that you could go Jahan Dotson again, but I just think that it wouldn't make as much sense. Again, you still have the chance to go wide receiver later in the draft. Zion Johnson is still available, and obviously Tua needs some more protection. Their offensive line wasn't great last year, so I am going to go with Zion Johnson. So that leaves us to the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, again, they need wide receiver. They need defensive back. Kaiir Elam is still here. Obviously Kyler Gordon is here. You can go Lewis Seen out of Georgia, who's really flying up draft boards right now, to replace Tyrann Mathieu, even though you did sign Justin Reed. There's certainly a lot of things that they could do here. However, what I will say is I think that they just need some pass rush, even if it means losing a year. David Ojabo still here. You're getting a top 10, maybe top 15, maybe top 10 talent in the draft at number 30. I think this is a very similar spot for to Greg Rousseau last year, where, at one point he was projected to go, as high as first overall in last year's draft, second overall in last year's draft, or 2 years ago now, whatever it was. But and then obviously he fell all the way to the Bills at 30, and they decided to take a chance on him because he was a very high talent guy, and he fell that far. I think a similar thing can happen here. If Ojabo falls all the way to Kansas City, I wouldn't be surprised if they take him. Bengals! The Bengals! Oh, the Bengals, they have offensive linemen now! It's crazy! Alex Kappa, Ted Karras, La'el Collins, they have an offensive line! And you know what that means? That means that you can do whatever you want at this spot. Look at this. Look at the players that you have available to you. You can go corner. You could take Kenyon Green and really just solidify, because you do still have a hole at left guard. However, I still think that it makes more sense to go defensive back here. Kaiir Elam out of Florida makes the most sense to me, and I accidentally clicked on his profile, so we'll go Kaiir Elam out of Florida. I think it makes the most sense here. They did re-sign Eli Apple, but Jesse Bates might be leaving at the end of the year after the franchise tag is up, and they just need some help in the secondary over there in Cincinnati. So I think Kaiir Elam makes sense. And then now we are here at the end of the first round. We made it all the way to the end. So who do I have the Lions taking? It's going to be very anticlimactic. Jahan Dotson out of Penn State is still available at number 32. I'm going to take him. You guys have heard me talk about Jahan Dotson at length. And I think that, he's a great fit for what the Lions are doing. And here's the great thing for the Lions. If you noticed who did not go in this first round, who I genuinely believe certainly could go in this first round, I just didn't really see a spot for him to go, honestly. Maybe he could go at 13 to the Texans, maybe to the Saints as well. I think that makes a lot of sense. Depending on how things play out, maybe even the Cardinals if Kyler Murray, ends up being not happy. I could certainly see him going at number 26 to the Titans as a surprise. But Matt Corral is still available, and you're going to have a chance to take him at 34 because certainly he's not going to get drafted at 33 by the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I think that this puts the Lions in a great spot to get three of the best players in the draft: Kayvon Thibodeau, Jahan Dotson, and your quarterback of the future, possibly, in Matt Corral. I think that puts them in a great spot for the future. But that is going to be it for me. So again, this is not going to be my last mock draft, but it is going to be close to it. I'm going to do at least one more before the draft comes. Hopefully two more. Hopefully I'll be able to get the one with the trades, and then also a 2-round mock draft before this kind of draft season is over. But thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys, and I will see you next time.
Hey guys, me again. I just want to say thank you so much for checking out the Lopes Goes Last podcast. It means the world to me that you decided to stick all the way to the end. That's super cool. So thank you again. And if you really, really like what you see, I'd love for you to subscribe, like the video, and share it with all your family and friends because, this is my passion project. This is what I love to do, and I really want the sucker to grow. And the only way that can happen is through you guys, is if you guys can help me out. So again, if you like what you saw, please subscribe, like the video, share with all your friends and family. That's the only way this is going to grow. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.